itself, and then it takes 21 days for the bees to hatch out. And their first job when they hatch out is to turn around and clean out cells. So as soon as they are born, as soon as they hatch out, they get to work. And the bees will go through a series of jobs. First, they will stay inside the hive. They will be cleaners. Then they will become nurse bees, where they will start to excrete a substance from a gland on their head known as royal jelly. And the royal jelly are produced by the nurse bees, and it gets fed to all of the larvae. The queen bee is going to get extra royal jelly, but all of the larvae get a little bit. After the nurse bees grow up a little bit more, they'll become architects, where they'll start producing wax. And then eventually they will start to move out of the hive. So then they become guards, where they will stay at the entrance, and eventually their last job are foragers. And the reason why that's one of their last jobs is because a bee is only as good as its wings. So if a bee is out in the world and it is flying, those wings are going to get tattered and torn much faster. So their lifespan is significantly decreased once they leave the hive. So they're going to stay inside for the majority of their life, where they're going to be constantly working in all these different phases. This, however, is not a worker bee. Who do we think this is? See the picture.
Drone.
It's a drone. The boy bee. So the queen and the workers are all female. They are hatched out of fertilized eggs. All of the bees have the ability to lay eggs. However, the queen bee is the only bee that has a fully functional reproductive system and can mate and lay fertilized eggs. So all the bees can lay unfertilized eggs, which actually turn into drones, but only the queen can lay fertilized eggs that turn into worker bees. So that is why if she is not present, we have a problem called it's called laying worker hive, where if there's no queen, the worker bees will just start laying eggs, but that's not their profession, so they don't know what they're doing. One of the telltale signs is instead of one beautiful egg in the center, there might be like 3 or 4 or 5, because they don't know what they're doing. So they're just going to be laying eggs like crazy. And unfortunately, that colony is going to collapse because there are no new workers being hatched out. They will all be hatching out as drones of boys. However, the drones are extremely important for the vitality of our honeybees. And the reason for that is because they are what spread the genetics. One queen bee will mate with up to 20 drones, and it can be within a 9-mile area. And the more drones that she's mating with from this large area, the more genetic variations that are going to be within that hive. And some of those variations are extremely valuable. One of our biggest issues that we face these days are called varroa mites. Varroa mites, they look almost like a tick that ride on the bees, but the size equivalent would be as if we had a horseshoe crab attached to us. It's a very problematic for the bees because if there are too many varroa mites, the biggest issue that they create are deformed wing virus. And is a bee good without wings? No. So when the varroa mites infect a hive, the bees that will hatch out will have deformed wings. And unfortunately that makes them useless, and eventually that colony will collapse without having the workers that it needs. But one of the greatest things, okay, I'm losing my train of thought, hold on. Variations. Yes, one of the best genes that come from the drones are for the hygienic traits. And the hygienic traits come in a variety of ways, but they're slowly learning how to maintain their mite levels without treatments. And this is one of the practices that I really focus on. Instead of putting treatments into the hive to kill these mites, I focus instead on the importance of genetics. So if I have a colony and those bees know how to spot a mite on another bee, pull it off, and what they do is they chew the legs and then discard it, that is a fabulous hygienic behavior that creates a sustainable, lifestyle for those bees. They can take care of their mites on their own. That's a genetic trait that will be passed down through the drones. So having queens that can mate with a variety of drones in the area, especially from colonies that are continuing each year to survive, even with certain levels of varroa, those are the fabulous hives that we want to keep propagating. Now the way that they create new hives, or new colonies, is with this process. This is going to be a queen bee. There actually will be 2. We have one here, and then one here. These are called queen cells. And the queens get special cells because they are much larger, and they are treated a little bit differently. They are fed the royal jelly, but they are just fed lots and lots of jelly, where they're swimming in it. All the larvae get a little bit, but the queens get excess. Now, there are some theories that if humans were to eat royal jelly, it would also help our fertility or reproduction as it does with a queen, but I would like to point out that we are not insects. Just pointing that out. So, I prefer royal jelly. It gets left for the bees. There are other products from the hive like honey and wax and propolis, which are much more fantastic and do have more research done to prove that they are beneficial. But the royal jelly I suggest leaving for the bees to make more queens. Now, they'll make a couple queens because you want to make sure you have a backup. One might not turn out right. So the bees will make a few queens, and right now is the time of year where this is happening. These are going to be the first process of swarming. And swarming is not something that the bees just decide to wake up one day and go, today, we will be swarming. Instead, it is a process. Has anybody seen a bee swarm like this? Or when they're on the move, and they just create this mass chaos. It's just everywhere, bees flying. That is like the last ending process of swarming. But it actually first begins in the hive. When the bees have decided they are so happy and healthy, they have filled their space, spring is in the air, the birds and the bees, they want to now propagate. So they're going to split into two. They're going to create a new queen. And while that queen is being created, because it's going to take about 14 to 16 days for her to hatch, they put their old queen on a diet because she has not left the hive since her mating flight when she was first hatched out, probably a year before. So she's going to be put on a diet because she's actually going to be the one that gets kicked out. The new queen that hatches out, she's going to be the one to take over. And then she's going to go out and mate with new drones in the area, creating a whole new generation of genetics for that colony. That's how we keep healthy bees. New queens, but with healthy drones, and letting them do it on their own. The research is showing now that queens are actually more sustainable and resilient if the bees have been able to choose them from their own eggs. If we introduce queens, they have a much lower success rate. So letting the bees choose an egg to turn into a queen is much healthier for them than introducing a queen at any other stage. So they're getting ready to swarm. They're creating a new queen. Their old queen is on a diet. And while that's happening, they're also sending out scouts. And these scouts are actually house hunting. They're going out and they're looking for spaces that are going to be ideal for the size, the function, everything. Dark cavities, a little bit of humidity, perfect. Attics, chimneys, irrigation boxes, all very common places to find bee swarms. If you have an irrigation box or the eaves along the roof, I suggest putting some wire mesh or just taping it up to prevent the bees from moving in. Because what they do is they'll vote on it. They'll be out, right now is when they're out, they're scouting, they're looking at any little holes or spaces, and they're gonna go back then and tell their sisters and say, hey, it's a really great house, a couple blocks down on your left, go take a look, tell me what you think. And they're gonna check it out, and they're gonna do this for about 2 weeks while that queen, this queen, is growing. They're voting on what house they're going to move into. As soon as this queen is about to hatch out, she lets out a piping sound. It sounds kind of like Morse code, and you can hear it if you put your ear up to a box, but it sounds kind of like, and it loosely translates to, I'm about to emerge. If there are any other queens here, I'm going to murder you. So, the old queen says, all right, noted. All of her worker bees say, all right, pack your bags, let's go. A portion of the workers with the old queen, they will then move out, and the new queen will hatch and take over with the remaining bees still left behind. The new swarm that is moving, they're purposefully creating it as chaotic as possible because they're actually in their most vulnerable state. They have no resources except for what they could carry. They have no home to protect, and they have nothing else. The only job that they have in their mind is to get that queen from point A to point B. Because if she does not make it, that entire colony is going to collapse. So they just make it chaos until they have to stop and rest, because again, she hasn't flown for possibly a year, so she's a little slow. So they'll stop, they'll ball around her, and again, it is just to protect her, let her catch her breath, and as soon as she's ready again, they will move on. They do not like to stay out in exposed places like this. They are only taking rest. Unfortunately, they sometimes do get stuck there for longer than needed, especially if the weather changes, gets too windy, gets too cold. They might stay, and unfortunately if they do, they sometimes just start building combs there. Not always the best. And it's typically not something they'd like, because since they're so exposed, they would not typically survive for the full year. But with swarms, that is where beekeepers come into play. Because the beekeepers can intercept a swarm and offer them a home, preventing them from moving into an unwanted place, but then also offering them, a way for us to work with them as well. So I really focus on the overall biology and life cycle of the bees. So for my practices, I follow along with letting the bees lead the way. Ultimately, they are the best teachers, and I am here to learn from them. If I'm doing something wrong, the bees will be the ones to tell me. And so I try and focus on their natural cycles rather than putting in any sort of chemicals or treatments. I also don't feed my bees any sugar water, because that would be like taking, you take their honey and give them back sugar water. It's like offering them a beautiful garden, having them work the garden, having them harvest the garden, but then giving them just a bag of McDonald's to eat. So the honey is their survival food. If they are healthy and they are very prolific and they are functioning in a sustainable way, there will be excess honey that can be harvested. But first and foremost, the focus should be on the health and well-being of the bees, and then the products come after. That is about the time I have for all of that. I will hang out for a minute if there are any questions, and then we have another speaker coming up.